My brother and his fiancée demanded $180K from my inheritance. I called them selfish. But when an accidental text revealed their real plan, the wedding was canceled, and my family was left shattered. I'm 27 years old, work in digital marketing for a mid-sized company, and honestly, never thought that money, the promise of money I don't even have yet, would destroy my relationship with my family like this. It all started like 5 years ago when my grandfather passed away. And the truth is, I'm still struggling to process everything that happened after. Especially the whole thing with my brother Benjamin and his ex-fiancée Ashley, because spoiler alert, they're not together anymore, and that whole situation was an absolute disaster that basically divided my family in two for almost a whole year. I guess I should start at the beginning, when my grandfather died. I was 22 at the time, had just finished college, and was trying to get my first decent job. You know, the typical post-graduation stress of not knowing what to do with your life. My grandfather and I were always close, much more than he was with Benjamin. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because I was older and I spent more time with him when I was little, or maybe because we shared the same kind of sarcastic sense of humor that my brother never got. Anyway, when he died, it was devastating for everyone, but especially for me because I felt like I had lost not just my grandfather, but also my best friend. You know what I mean? The will was read like a month after the funeral, and that's when we all found out that my grandfather had left me a trust fund. It wasn't an absurd amount like multimillionaire level, but it was significant, like enough to buy a small house or pay for a complete master's degree without debt, basically around $180,000. But here's the thing, and this is super important. The money came with specific conditions that my grandfather had established with his lawyer. I couldn't access the money until I turned 30, and I could only use it for specific things: additional education, buying a first home, or starting a business. Nothing about spending it on vacations or cars or stuff like that. It had to be for something he considered an investment in my future. When the will was read, Benjamin was there, obviously, and I remember his face perfectly when he found out. He was like 20 years old at the time, still in college, and he definitely expected the money to be split between the two of us. Or at least that's what he told me later. My parents, Diana and Richard, owners of a bakery in our town, tried to explain to him that grandfather had his reasons. That maybe it was because I was older or because I had spent more time with him. I don't know. But at that moment, Benjamin seemed to accept it. He said something like, "It's okay. It was his money, and he could do whatever he wanted with it." And I thought, great. No drama here. We all understand. The next few years were relatively normal. I got my job, moved into a small apartment with a roommate. Benjamin finished college and started working in the family business with my parents at the bakery. We were close, talked often, saw each other at Sunday family dinners at my parents' house. You know, the typical family dynamic where not everything is perfect, but things work more or less well. Benjamin was always the golden boy of the family, let's say, the one who could do anything, and my parents thought he was wonderful, while I was more the independent daughter who did her thing without much fuss. Like 2 years ago, Benjamin met Ashley on a dating app, I think. Or maybe it was at a bar. I'm honestly not sure of the exact details of how they met. Ashley was 24 at the time, came from a family with money, like her father owned several car dealerships in the state. And from the beginning, she gave me a weird vibe I couldn't explain. She was one of those people who's always talking about brands and how much things cost, and like casually mentioning that her purse was a Michael Kors or that her shoes were from some designer, I don't know. And I was there like, okay, cool, but why are you telling me this? My parents loved her from day one because she was all smiles and compliments about the bakery and about how talented Benjamin was, and my brother was completely in love, to like obsessed with her in a way I'd never seen in him. Like a year and a half ago, Benjamin proposed to her, and it was this elaborate thing with rose petals and a hidden photographer and the whole show. And Ashley said yes, obviously. And suddenly the whole family was in wedding planning mode. I tried to be the supportive sister, went with her to look at dresses, helped with the guest list, all those things you're supposed to do, but every time I spent time with Ashley, I had this feeling in my stomach that something wasn't right. Like, when you know someone isn't genuine but you can't pinpoint exactly why? The first time Ashley mentioned the trust fund was at a family dinner like 6 months after the engagement. We were all at my parents' house. It was a normal Sunday. And out of nowhere, Ashley asks, "So Amelia, what are you going to do with all that money from your grandfather when you have access to it?" And the way she said it was super casual, like she was asking about the weather, but I felt everyone at the table tense up a little. I told her I'd probably use it for a down payment on a house or maybe for a master's degree, that I still wasn't sure, and she nodded and said something like, "Oh, that's nice. I must be nice to have that financial security waiting for you." And I didn't think much about it at that moment, but looking back, I should have seen it coming. The following weeks, Ashley started mentioning the money more often, always casually, never directly. She'd say things like, "I wish we had a fund like that for the wedding," or, "Benjamin and I are saving for a house, but it's so hard in this market." And I started to feel like she was setting me up for something, like when someone softens you up before asking for a big favor. My cousin, Jessica, who's like my best friend besides being my cousin, told me to be careful, that Ashley gave her a bad feeling. But I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. The moment everything exploded was like 4 months before the wedding. Ashley invited me to lunch, just the two of us. Said she wanted to talk about something important related to the wedding. We went to this medium fancy Italian restaurant downtown, and after ordering and making small talk for like 10 minutes, Ashley goes straight to the point. She tells me, "Look, Amelia, Benjamin and I have been talking, and we were wondering if you'd consider sharing a portion of the trust fund with us, maybe as a wedding gift or to help us with a down payment on a house." I just sat there like, what? Because I literally couldn't process what I had just heard. I told her the money wasn't technically mine yet, that I couldn't access it until I turned 30. That was like 3 years away, and that besides it had restrictions on how I could use it. Ashley interrupts me and says, "Well, yeah, but you could talk to the lawyer and see if there's any way to access a part earlier, or maybe you could commit to giving us a loan when you have access," something like that. And the way she said it was like it was the most reasonable thing in the world, like asking someone for half their inheritance was completely normal. I tried to stay calm and explain to her that no, that wasn't possible, that the trust fund had very specific terms established by my grandfather and there was no way to change them, and that besides, and I said this as kindly as I could, the money was my personal inheritance from my grandfather. It wasn't a family resource that everyone could take from. Ashley got all defensive and told me that she thought family helped each other, that Benjamin was my brother, and I should want to help him start his life with her. And I just thought, this woman is completely crazy if she thinks I'm going to give her my inheritance. That night, Benjamin called me, and he wasn't a sweet version of my brother anymore. He was upset. And he tells me that Ashley is very hurt by my refusal, that she was just trying to include me in their plans, that I didn't have to be so selfish about it. I explained exactly the same thing I had told Ashley. The restrictions of the fund, the fact that it was my personal inheritance, but he kept insisting that I could at least consider giving them something when I had access to the money. I asked him, "How much are you asking for exactly?" And he went quiet for a moment before saying, "We were thinking maybe half, like $90,000. I almost fell out of my chair. They were literally asking me for half of my inheritance like it was nothing. I told him no, definitely not, and that he needed to stop pressuring me about this. Benjamin got even angrier and said something about how I had always been grandfather's favorite and he never got anything, and that the least I could do was share. I hung up the phone feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach, because never had I seen my brother behave like this. It was like Ashley had put all this garbage in his head about what I owed him or something. The following months were absolute hell. Ashley started involving my parents, telling them I was being selfish and refusing to help my own brother. And the thing is, my parents started believing her. My mother called me one day and basically gave me a sermon about the importance of family and how money shouldn't divide people, and that maybe I should reconsider at least giving them something for the wedding. I explained the whole situation again. The restrictions of the fund, the fact that I couldn't even access the money yet. But she kept saying things like, "Well, when you have access, you could help them, couldn't you?" My father was worse because he's more direct. He called me and told me I was acting like a spoiled child, that grandfather had left me more money than any person my age needed, and that I should be grateful and willing to share with my family. I reminded him that Benjamin worked in the family bakery and would someday inherit the business that was probably worth much more than my trust fund, and my father got furious and told me that was different, that the business was to support the family, not to sell it and take the money. The logic made no sense, but it was clear they had already decided I was the bad guy. In this situation, Ashley escalated things even more. She started talking to other family members, uncles, aunts, cousins, and telling them her version of the story, where I was this horrible sister who refused to help Benjamin with his wedding and his future. Most of the extended family didn't know the details of the trust fund, didn't know about the restrictions or conditions. They just heard that I had money and refused to share it. Suddenly, I started receiving messages and calls from relatives telling me I should reconsider, that family comes first, that money comes and goes, but family is forever. All those cliches people say when they don't understand the full situation. The only thing that kept me sane during all this was Jessica, my cousin, who from the beginning was on my side. She knew all the details of the trust fund because she was present when the will was read, and she constantly told me not to give in, that this was pure manipulation, and that Ashley was showing her true colors. Jessica also started noticing weird things, like that Ashley was posting on social media about how expensive the wedding they were planning was, showing the super elegant venue they had reserved, the 5-course menu, the premium open bar, and Jessica would tell me, if they have money for all this, why are they pressuring you for yours? Things reached a breaking point when my parents organized what they called a family intervention meeting at their house. I didn't want to go, but Jessica convinced me to. Said that if I didn't go, it would look like I was admitting I'd done something wrong. I arrived and there were my parents, Benjamin, Ashley, and some uncles and aunts, like 8 people total, and I realized immediately that this was basically a coordinated attack. My father started by saying we had called this meeting to resolve the conflict that was dividing the family, and that we all needed to talk calmly and find a solution that worked for everyone. Ashley spoke first, and I swear it was an Oscar-worthy performance. She started by saying how much she respected me and how much she valued having me as a future sister-in-law, but that she was very hurt by my refusal to even consider helping them. She said, with tears in her eyes and everything, that she understood the money was mine, but that she had hoped I would want to be part of their new life with Benjamin, that she thought we would be a family and that families supported each other. Then she proceeded to explain all their financial difficulties, how they were struggling to save for a house, how the wedding was turning out more expensive than expected, and how a small loan from me, which didn't even have to be a gift, just a loan they could pay back over time, would make a huge difference in their lives. My mother immediately jumped in to support her, saying she saw Ashley's point, that it really didn't seem that unreasonable to ask me to consider helping when I had access to the money. Benjamin added that he didn't understand why I was being so inflexible about this, that he had never asked me for anything before, that he had always been the supportive brother, and that this was the only time he was asking me for help with something important. Several of my uncles nodded, and one of them said something about how when he was young, family always helped each other and that young people nowadays were very individualistic. I tried to explain myself. Again, I told them about the restrictions of the fund, that I literally couldn't give them a loan because the money could only be used for specific purposes approved by the executor of the will. I showed them the documentation I had brought, the relevant pages of my grandfather's will that clearly explained the terms and conditions. But nobody seemed to really be listening. Everyone kept saying that surely there was some way to get around the restrictions, or that I could talk to the lawyer and make an exception, or that when I finally had access to the money, I could use it differently than planned so I could help Benjamin. It was at that moment when Ashley dropped what had clearly been her play all along. She said, "Well, if you can't give us the money now or make a loan from the fund, maybe you could consider taking a personal loan from a bank using the future trust fund as collateral and give us that money." And I just sat there like, did you just literally suggest that I go into debt to give you money? Jessica, who was also there because I had asked her to come as moral support, stood up and said, "This is ridiculous. You're literally asking her to ruin her financial future to pay for your wedding. Can you hear yourselves?" The meeting disintegrated into a huge fight. My father yelled at Jessica to stay out of it, that it was an immediate family matter. Ashley cried more and said she just wanted everyone to be happy. Benjamin called me selfish and said I was ruining his wedding. I ended up leaving there crying, completely devastated because my own family had turned against me over money I didn't even have in my hands yet. Jessica followed me and told me she couldn't believe what she had just witnessed, that was expert-level family manipulation and that I needed to protect myself from these people. After that meeting, things got even worse. Ashley apparently decided that if she couldn't get the money in a friendly way, she'd get it by making my life miserable until I gave in. She started posting things on social media, never mentioning me directly, but clearly about me, things like, "It's sad when greed is more important than family," or, "Some people have so much but aren't willing to share anything." Her friends would comment supportive things, and I knew she had probably told them some distorted version of the story, where I was the villain. Worse yet, I started receiving messages from family members who hadn't even been at the meeting. Second uncles, distant cousins, family friends, all telling me they had heard about the situation and I should reconsider my position. It was obvious that Ashley had launched a complete smear campaign against me, telling anyone who would listen that I was destroying Benjamin's happiness out of greed. Some of the messages were kind, like, "Hey, I've heard there are problems. Just wanted to say I hope you find a solution." But others were directly accusatory and cruel. Then I found out from Jessica, who heard it from another cousin, that Ashley had been investigating my personal finances. Apparently, she had asked Benjamin about my salary, my expenses, where I lived, how much I paid in rent, basically trying to build a case that I had money available now and was lying about not being able to help them. Ashley had even suggested that maybe I had already accessed the trust fund somehow and was hiding it, which was completely false and frankly delusional. It was at that point, like 2 months before the wedding, that I decided I needed legal help. I contacted the lawyer who had handled my grandfather's will and explained the whole situation to him. He was very understanding and told me that, unfortunately, situations like this were more common than people thought, that money brought out the worst in families. He helped me draft a cease and desist letter that we sent to Ashley and Benjamin, basically telling them to stop harassing me about the trust fund or face legal consequences. He also documented all the harassment I had been experiencing, the messages, the social media posts, everything, in case we needed to take legal action later. When Benjamin and Ashley received the letter, Benjamin called me furious, yelling about how I had involved lawyers in a family matter, that I was being dramatic and trying to ruin his life. I told him, as calmly as I could muster, that they were the ones who turned this into a problem, that I had said no from the beginning clearly and politely, and that their constant harassment had forced me to seek legal protection. He hung up the phone and didn't talk to me for weeks after that. My parents were also furious about the lawyer's letter. My mother called me crying, saying she couldn't believe I had threatened my own brother with legal action, that family should resolve problems internally without involving outsiders. I tried to explain that I hadn't threatened anyone, that I had only asked to be left alone. But she didn't want to hear it. My father was more direct and told me that if I continued down this path, there were consequences, though he didn't specify what consequences exactly. Basically, they were telling me to choose between giving Benjamin money or losing my family, which was absurd and painful in equal parts. The wedding was approaching, and I had assumed I probably wasn't invited anymore, or that if I was, I definitely wouldn't be welcome. But it turns out Ashley wanted to keep up appearances, so the invitation was still standing. Jessica asked me if I was going to go, and I told her honestly I didn't know. That part of me felt I should go because he was my brother. But another part didn't want to subject myself to a whole day of judgmental looks and passive-aggressive comments. In the end, I decided I wouldn't go, that I wasn't going to put myself in that position, and I sent Benjamin a message telling him I wouldn't be attending but wished him the best. But then, like a week before the wedding, something happened that changed everything completely. Benjamin accidentally sent a message to the family group chat that was clearly meant only for Ashley. The message said something like, "We almost have it. After the wedding, we're going to pressure her again. Your mom said she can convince her parents to cut off contact if she doesn't cooperate. That'll definitely make her give in." I was in that family chat along with my parents, some uncles, and Jessica. So everyone saw the message before Benjamin realized his mistake and tried to delete it. Immediately after, Benjamin sent a bunch of messages like, "I'm sorry. That message wasn't for here. Please ignore it. It's not what it seems," but it was already too late. Jessica immediately called me and told me to take screenshots of everything before they tried to do more damage control, which I did. I captured the original message and all the panic messages that came after. Then Jessica, being the incredible person she is, started investigating a little and talked to some other cousins who were friends with Ashley on social media. It turns out Ashley had been having similar doxgos, conversations and private messages with her friends, basically bragging about how she was manipulating the family against me and how she was sure they would eventually get the money. One of Ashley's friends, who apparently wasn't that close and thought all this was horrible, sent Jessica screenshots of conversations where Ashley literally said things like, "We have her cornered. Her family is on our side. She's going to have to give in eventually or be completely alone. And imagine what we could do with $90,000. We could have the wedding of our dreams and still have money left for a down payment on an amazing house. Jessica shared all these screenshots in the family group chat, and I was just sitting there looking at my phone while everything exploded in real time. I could see when my parents were reading the messages because their read indicators changed. My mother was the first to respond, saying something like, "This can't be real. I need to talk to Benjamin right now." My father wrote, "Benjamin, call me immediately." Other family members started commenting, expressing shock and disappointment. The whole narrative that Ashley had built so carefully for months collapsed in a matter of hours. Benjamin called my mother. I could hear the whole conversation later because my mother called me crying to tell me everything, and he basically admitted that yes, Ashley had been orchestrating this complete campaign to get my money, and that he had been so blinded by being in love with her that he had followed her plan without really questioning it. He said Ashley had assured him this was normal, that families shared resources like this, and that I was being unreasonable by refusing. My mother asked him about the comment about using Ashley's parents to pressure me more, and Benjamin went quiet because there was no way to defend that. My father told Benjamin to come to the house immediately, and when he arrived, they had a 3-hour conversation. I don't know all the details, but basically my parents told him he had been behaving horribly, that they had been manipulated by Ashley, and that he needed to end that relationship before the wedding. Benjamin apparently resisted at first, saying he loved Ashley and everyone was overreacting, but my parents showed him all the screenshots again. The conversations where Ashley bragged about the manipulation, where she talked about pressuring me until I broke, where she clearly was only interested in the money and didn't care about the damage she was causing to the family. The wedding was canceled 3 days before the scheduled date. Benjamin broke up with Ashley after confronting her about the messages, and she basically admitted everything, saying yes, she had been trying to get the money, but she didn't see what the problem was, because I obviously had more than I needed. She told Benjamin that if he really loved her, he would be on her side and continue pressuring me, and when Benjamin said no, that this had gone too far, Ashley told him that then clearly he didn't love her enough and the engagement was over. It was her who technically ended the relationship in the end, but only because Benjamin was no longer willing to go along with her plan. The disaster that followed was incredible to witness from a distance. Ashley had to cancel the whole wedding, contact all the guests, return gifts, lose deposits on the venue and vendors, the whole thing. Her own parents, when they found out what she had been doing, were mortified because apparently they had no idea about any of this. Her mother wrote to my mother apologizing for her daughter's behavior and saying that if they had known Ashley was doing this, they would have stopped her immediately. Ashley basically disappeared from social media for months after that, and according to what I heard from Jessica, who heard from someone else, Ashley ended up moving to another state because she couldn't handle the humiliation of everyone knowing what she had done. My parents came to my apartment like a week after everything exploded and apologized, both crying, saying they had been terrible to me, that they should have trusted me from the beginning, and that they had allowed Ashley to manipulate them because they wanted Benjamin to be happy and thought I was being obstinate without reason. I told them that what hurt me most wasn't so much that they had been on Benjamin's side at first, because I understand that as parents they want to support their children, but that they never really listened to my side of the story, never considered that maybe I had valid reasons to say no, and that they had basically treated me like I was a horrible person for wanting to keep my own inheritance. My father admitted he had been thinking in terms of how they handled things in their generation, where families really shared resources more openly, but that he realized this was different, that Ashley wasn't asking for help in an emergency but was trying to take control of money that wasn't even hers. My mother said she felt incredibly guilty for calling me selfish and for pressuring me when I was simply trying to protect what my grandfather had left specifically to me. Benjamin also apologized, though that took longer. He came to see me like a month after everything ended. He looked terrible, had lost weight, and obviously wasn't sleeping well. He told me he felt like an idiot for letting Ashley manipulate him that way, that looking back he could see all the red flags he had ignored because he was so in love. He explained that Ashley had started mentioning things to him about the trust fund very early in their relationship, making it seem casual but constantly planting the idea that I should share the money. By the time they got to the engagement, Benjamin was already completely convinced that I had a family obligation to help them, and that my refusal was a betrayal. I told Benjamin I forgave him, because he's my brother and I love him, but that things between us were going to take time to heal completely. I explained how betrayed I had felt when he sided with Ashley, when he pressured me for the money, despite me clearly explaining why I couldn't and wouldn't give it. Benjamin cried and said he understood, that he didn't expect everything to go back to normal immediately, but that he hoped we could eventually rebuild our relationship. I suggested that maybe he should talk to a therapist about all this, process what had happened and why he had been so easy to manipulate, and he agreed. The extended family also started contacting me, some apologizing for believing Ashley's version without asking for my side, others simply saying they were glad the truth had come to light. Some still seemed a little uncomfortable with the situation, like they didn't know exactly what to say or how to behave around me, but at least they weren't sending me messages anymore telling me I was a bad person. Jessica was absolutely fundamental during all this, keeping me sane, constantly reminding me that I hadn't done anything wrong, and being the only person in my family who had supported me from day one. Now, like a year after all that mess, things are better but not completely fixed. Benjamin is in therapy, which is good, and he's working on himself and understanding how he ended up in such a manipulative relationship. We talk regularly now, not as much as before Ashley, but we're working on it. My parents have been much more conscious about listening to both sides of any situation since then. I think they learned a hard lesson about assuming they know the whole story. I went back to Sunday family dinners, though the first ones were definitely awkward, with everyone avoiding mentioning Ashley or the canceled wedding. I established firmer boundaries with my family after all this. I made it clear to them that the trust fund is mine and only mine, and that when I have access to it in 2 more years, I'm going to use it for what my grandfather wanted me to use it for, probably a down payment on a house, and that I don't want to have conversations again about sharing it or loaning it or any variation of that. My parents have respected that so far, and Benjamin too, though I know it probably still hurts him a little that grandfather left that money to me and not him. But at least now he understands it's not my fault, and I have no obligation to compensate him for that. The truth is that this whole experience taught me a lot about setting boundaries and about not giving in to family pressure even when it feels impossibly difficult. There were so many moments during those months where I thought, maybe I should just give them something so this ends. But Jessica always reminded me that giving in would have sent the message that manipulation and harassment work, and that Ashley probably would have come back asking for more eventually. She was right. Because once you saw those screenshots and saw how Ashley really thought about all this, it became clear that it never would have been enough, that she always would have wanted more. Sometimes I think about how things would have been if Benjamin had never sent that message accidentally, if Ashley had continued with her plan without being exposed. They'd probably be married now, and they'd probably still be pressuring me, and my family would probably still be on their side because they never would have seen the truth about what Ashley was doing. It's scary to think about that, about how one person can manipulate a whole family so effectively, about how everyone was so willing to believe I was the bad guy without really questioning the narrative Ashley had built. Benjamin told me a few weeks ago that he feels like he dodged a bullet by not marrying Ashley, that looking back there are so many other red flags he ignored besides the whole money thing. He said Ashley was always very concerned with appearances and what people thought, that she needed to have the best things and be seen in a certain way, and that the marriage probably would have been a disaster even without all the drama about the trust fund. I agree with him, but I don't say it out loud because I don't want him to feel worse than he already feels. My grandfather would have hated all this, the drama, the fighting, the way his gift became the source of so much conflict. But I also think he would have been proud that I stood firm, that I didn't let them pressure me into giving away something he specifically wanted me to have. He always told me when I was a girl that independence and strength were the most important things a person could have, and I guess in a way this horrible situation was a test of that. Last month I turned 27, and Benjamin gave me a card where he wrote a long apology about everything that happened, about how he wished he could turn back time and handle things differently from the beginning. My parents made me a cake at the bakery, my favorite since I was a kid. And we had a small family celebration where everyone pretended things were normal. Jessica whispered to me at one point, "See? It was worth standing firm." And she was right. There are still 3 years until I can access the trust fund. And when that day comes, I'm going to honor my grandfather's intentions by using the money to build a stable future for myself, maybe buying a small house where I can start my own family someday, or maybe investing in more education. I still don't know exactly. What I do know is that I'm never going to let anyone make me feel guilty about protecting my future, ever again.